The pilot grabbed the phone tightly, her voice full of irritation. "There's a black boy causing trouble in the pilot's lounge. Come here immediately." She turned to face the boy coldly, shouting, "Get out of here. This place is not for you." Captain Renato Oliveira stared intently at Lucas Santos, the 16-year-old teenager nervously holding his visitor badge. "I'm just waiting for my guide. She said I could stay here." "I don't care what someone told you," Oliveira abruptly interrupted, speaking immediately into her radio. "Security, come to the pilot's lounge now. We have an unauthorized person here." Lucas froze, fear taking over his heart. He had just been sitting there, watching TV, waiting. Was that a crime? Lucas, the 16-year-old black student, with bright eyes and a sharp mind, smiled slightly as he looked at the special badge pinned to his shirt. It was an opportunity he had earned surpassing hundreds of other applicants, achieved through a passionate essay that demonstrated his deep love for aviation since childhood. Lucas could identify different types of aircraft just by the sound of their engines, skillfully draw the complex control panels of modern airplanes, and often spent hours sitting by the window, fascinated by the flight paths of the planes crossing the sky. Now, being in this room reserved for real pilots, his heart raced with excitement and nervousness. Lucas leaned back in the chair, his gaze fixed on the TV screen that showed a documentary about the history of commercial aviation, completely unaware of the world around him. The door suddenly burst open with a loud bang, snapping Lucas out of his passionate daydream. Standing in the doorway was a woman in an impeccable pilot uniform, her shoulders adorned with 4 golden stripes that signaled authority and experience. It was Captain Ren Oliveira, a veteran pilot with over 20 years of service at NATAM. Lucas immediately noticed the surprised yet suspicious look in her eyes as she entered. Captain Oliveira frowned, walking quickly toward Lucas, each step like a cold blade slicing through the air. Her voice sounded harsh and sharp enough to make Lucas flinch. "You, who let you in here? What are you doing in the pilot's lounge?" Lucas instinctively stood up, his heart racing, trying to remain calm and polite as he explained, "Hello, ma'am. I'm Lucas Santos. I'm part of the TAN Career Exploration Program. I'm just waiting for my guide to return." Oliveira smiled with disdain, her eyes revealing nothing but contempt. "This is not a place for someone like you," she said. Lucas stammered, dazed and confused. Ma'am, I have permission to be here. I have a badge, and Mrs. Teresa from HR." Before Lucas could finish, Captain Oliveira quickly ripped the badge from his neck, the strap snapping with a sharp sound. She turned the badge over and examined it before furiously declaring, "A fake badge. I knew it. A boy like you has no right to be in this restricted area. This is a serious security breach." Lucas's face went pale, shocked and terrified by the severe accusation. He didn't even have a chance to process what was happening before. Oliveira grabbed her radio and coldly called airport security. "I need assistance immediately in the pilot's lounge. We have an intruder in a restricted area, possibly using a fake badge. This is a serious situation." Lucas's heart tightened, his whole body trembling. Curious looks began to gather outside the room. The unfounded but firm accusation from Captain Oliveira was turning what should have been the most important day of Lucas's life into a nightmare, just because of his skin color, just because of the deeply rooted prejudice of an adult. Lucas's lifelong dream was now hanging by a thread. The bright future he had fought so hard for could be destroyed in an instant. Lucas stood still, his eyes red but holding back tears with all his strength. He understood the tragedy had just begun. The crackling sound of Captain Oliveira's radio broke the silence of the lounge, immediately drawing the attention of nearby airport staff. Lucas was paralyzed, feeling all the eyes slowly turning toward him, each gaze like a needle piercing his self-esteem. He gathered all the courage he could and took a step forward, his voice trembling with a mix of confusion and nervousness. "Mum, I didn't use a fake badge. Mrs. Teresa from the HR department personally brought me here. I've been waiting for almost 20 minutes, and I haven't done anything wrong." But Captain Oliveira paid no attention to Lucas's words. Her eyes were cold, completely indifferent to the panic clearly written on his face. She held the badge tightly in her hand, raising it as if it were evidence of a serious crime she had just uncovered. Then she turned toward the door, raising her voice to address the airport staff and pilots who were gathering. Attention, everyone! We are constantly trained to identify and address security threats. This is a typical case, a young man using a fake badge to infiltrate the pilot's area, possibly collecting confidential information or planning to sabotage airline property. Murmurs spread through the crowd, and some began to look at Lucas with suspicion and, of course, disdain. The feeling of isolation quickly overwhelmed him, his heart pounding with anger and helplessness in the face of the injustice he was experiencing. Lucas scanned the room with his eyes, hoping to see Mrs. Teresa or someone who could confirm his innocence. But no one came forward. At that moment, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. Two airport security officers entered with serious expressions, quickly approaching Lucas, as directed by Captain Oliveira. She pointed directly at Lucas, speaking in a firm and unwavering tone. "It's him. I want you both to take him out of here and perform a full search. I'm sure this is an intentional security violation." One of the officers, a middle-aged man with a stern expression, looked Lucas up and down before speaking in a firm but professional tone. "Son, please come with us. We need to verify your identity and clarify the situation." Lucas instinctively took a step back, his voice faltering with fear, but trying hard to stay calm and logical. "I really had permission to be here. I'm part of the Aviation Experience program. Please contact Mrs. Teresa. I'm not lying." But Captain Oliveira intervened again, mercilessly cutting off Lucas's last hope. Her sharp gaze offered no sympathy or doubt in her judgment. "I don't want to waste more time. He breached a restricted area carrying a fake badge and has been making unverified excuses. You need to handle this immediately. This is about flight security. It can't be taken lightly." Her words sounded like a sentence being pronounced right then and there, and Lucas was thrown into a state of panic. Everything around him seemed to spin out of control. Sweat began to form on his forehead as the full weight of the nightmare settled on him. The injustice was blatant before him, but he could do nothing to fight or change the situation. As the two security officers approached, Lucas pulled out his cell phone, trembling, his voice breaking as he pleaded, "Please, let me call my dad. He can explain everything." Oliveira grimaced with disdain, crossing her arms and speaking in a mocking tone that only Lucas could feel the full weight of. "Go ahead, call him, though I'm sure your dad won't be able to help in this situation. I'll make sure your parents, probably working here as janitors, get fired for letting their son cause trouble at the airport." The room fell silent in the face of her cruelty and blatant prejudice, but no one dared to defend Lucas. He remained still, his eyes brimming but not crying, his hands trembling as he dialed his father's number. Each ring echoed in the silence, each second stretching on forever, amplifying the tension and the tragedy. At that moment, Lucas could only hope that his father would arrive in time to save him from the abyss of this cruel injustice. The ringing of the phone seemed endless, each sound tightening Lucas's heart with anxiety. His eyes were fixed on the phone screen, nervously awaiting his father's familiar voice. But at that exact moment, when reality was growing darker than ever, beautiful memories from the past suddenly flooded his mind, gently softening the pain that tore at his heart. Lucas vividly remembered the first time he boarded an airplane. It was on his 6th birthday, and his father, Ricardo Santos, had just taken a position at the National Civil Aviation Agency. To celebrate his son's birthday, he secretly arranged a special tour at Guarulhos International Airport in São Paulo. At that time, Lucas was just a little boy with bright eyes, standing under the wing of the immense Boeing, watching the plane soar into the sky like a powerful and majestic metal bird. He remembered the feeling in that moment, a feeling that was at the same time amazed and joyful, mixed with a deep desire to conquer the vast skies. After that special tour, Lucas constantly asked his father about everything related to aviation. He became fascinated by how those jet planes glided so smoothly through the sky, by the principles of aerodynamics, and by how pilots manage to navigate planes safely through stormy skies. Despite his busy job managing flight safety across the country, Ricardo always found time to sit beside his son, patiently explaining every detail in depth. And in every conversation, he always said one thing to Lucas, that he could become a great pilot if he was brave enough. In the months that followed, Lucas began to fill his room with model airplanes of all sizes, from classic planes like the Wright Flyer to the world's most advanced aircraft like the Boeing Dreamliner and Airbus jets. The walls of his room quickly became covered with airplane posters, engine diagrams, and historical information about the aviation industry. His father once smiled and joked that his room looked like a mini aviation museum. Not just a passion, Lucas also made his dream of becoming a pilot real through hard training. He frequently used flight simulator software, patiently practicing basic maneuvers, learning to take off and land, and gradually progressing to handle emergency scenarios in virtual flights. Many times, his mother had to remind Lucas to go to bed early, as he would stay up late practicing his flight skills on the computer. But Ricardo, on the other hand, always silently encouraged his son, knowing that each hour spent practicing brought Lucas a little closer to his great dream. However, the path to that dream was not without challenges. Lucas faced doubt from people around him, comments from people who didn't believe that a black boy could aspire to become a pilot. During those moments, Ricardo always arrived at the right time, placing a hand on his son's shoulder and looking into his eyes with unwavering determination. Lucas, others may doubt you, but never allow yourself to doubt who you are. You belong to the sky, and the sky will always be open to you. Those encouraging words helped Lucas overcome his most difficult moments, and when the greatest opportunity arose, the selection process for the Special Aviation Experience Program by TAN for exceptional students, Lucas knew he couldn't let it slip by. He spent weeks preparing his application essay, writing about his passion for aviation, his experiences with his father, and, above all, his burning desire to become a pilot. On the day the results were announced, Lucas was so nervous he couldn't open the letter himself. It was Ricardo who had to encourage him and open the letter for him. The moment his father smiled radiantly and told Lucas that he had beaten out hundreds of candidates to be chosen, Lucas couldn't hold back his tears. It wasn't just a victory, it was a confirmation of his dream and of the years of tireless effort he had dedicated. Lucas hugged his father tightly, crying with immense joy, silently thanking him for always believing in him and standing by his side throughout this challenging journey. But Lucas never imagined that today, the first day of the special program, a day that should have been the greatest turning point, would become a nightmare. Captain Oliveira's doubt and prejudice felt like sharp knives, slowly cutting the purest dream of Lucas, piece by piece. The things she said, her attitude, everything seemed to declare that his dream would always be limited by his skin color and origin. Lucas gripped his phone tightly, trying to swallow the lump in his throat. He remembered his father's words and silently told himself to be strong, to stand firm in protecting the dream he had nurtured for so many years. Because now, more than ever, Lucas understood that the true battle for his dream had begun. And no matter how desperate the circumstances became, Lucas still believed that his father would arrive in time to rescue him from the darkness that prejudice and injustice had cast over him. The beautiful memories of his father and the dream of flying, which had just come part of Lucas's fear, were immediately extinguished by the powerful footsteps of the airport security team. Two men in gray uniforms quickly entered the room. Their faces were cold and serious, their stares penetrating as if they were observing a real suspect. Lucas instinctively took a step back, feeling as if he had done something seriously wrong, although he couldn't understand exactly what. One of the security officers, a tall man with a stern expression, briefly looked around the room before fixing his gaze firmly on Lucas. He approached with determination, his voice clear, but full of threat as he spoke. "Boy, you need to explain yourself immediately. How did you get into this pilot's room?" Lucas swallowed hard, trying to control his breathing, which was becoming rapid. His eyes were wide with fear, but he still struggled to remain somewhat calm. He took a deep breath and spoke slowly. I'm Lucas Santos. I'm part of the TAN Professional Experience Program. I was brought here by Mrs. Teresa from HR, but she left to handle an urgent matter. The security officer listened to his explanation and then turned to Captain Oliveira, as if seeking confirmation of Lucas's statement. But instead of acknowledging or calmly reconsidering the situation, Oliveira slightly shook her head, shrugged with a mocking expression, and responded in a cold and skeptical tone. I've worked at this airline for nearly 20 years. Never has a student entered the pilot's room unsupervised. His badge looks fake. Check it carefully. You'll see. That statement struck at the core of everyone's trust and immediately changed the attitude of the security team. The tall man stepped closer to Lucas, his eyes full of doubt. Hand over your badge and explain where you got this ID. Who gave this to you? Lucas shakily opened the pocket of his jacket, looking for his small wallet that contained his student ID. He tried again to explain as clearly and sincerely as possible. I'm not lying. Mrs. Teresa gave me this badge this morning, with my name and photo. Please, you can call Mrs. Teresa to verify what I'm saying. I really have no bad intentions. However, his sincere explanation was drowned out by the whispers of doubt from other employees and pilots, who increasingly gathered around the door. Their curious and skeptical gazes were mixed with caution, all directed at Lucas as if, just by looking at him, they could determine whether he was innocent or guilty. No one spoke in his defense. No one said a word to confirm he was telling the truth. Lucas painfully realized that he was completely alone in this battle against prejudice. Captain Oliveira, fully exploiting the psychological advantage on her side, spoke again with a serious expression, deliberately emphasizing the imaginary danger. Look carefully. This is exactly how people with bad intentions infiltrate sensitive areas like this. We cannot afford to be careless, especially when aviation security must always be a top priority. Who can guarantee that he doesn't have more dangerous plans? These baseless accusations immediately created a stronger wave of doubt in the minds of everyone present. Some pilots began shaking their heads in irritation, their eyes seeming to blame Lucas for causing the problem. Others discreetly picked up their phones to take photos or videos, their curiosity tinged with malicious intent. Lucas felt his heart shatter in despair. The absurdity, the injustice, and the prejudice created an enormous pressure weighing on him. The tall security officer took another step forward, pressing Lucas against the corner of the wall. He extended his hand, his voice cold and unwavering, showing, "No mercy. We'll have to take you from here for a more thorough check. If you continue refusing to cooperate, we'll have to consider this as resistance to law enforcement." Lucas could clearly feel the terrifying pressure of his words and actions. He realized he had fallen into a trap of doubt, too heavy and intense. Lucas had never imagined that the pure dream he had built throughout his childhood could crumble so quickly, just because of a prejudiced look from a stranger. He took a deep breath, his tears threatening to fall, but he tried to hold them back. In despair, Lucas once again looked at his phone, hoping his father would appear in time to help him escape this terrible situation. But the phone screen remained painfully silent, and Lucas realized in that moment that he was completely alone, trapped in the bitterest web of doubt he had ever faced in his life. Lucas's eyes scanned the break room, desperately searching for any sign of sympathy in the sea of people surrounding him. But all he received were cold and suspicious glances, or worse, the painful indifference of those around him. He had never felt so completely alone, as if all the trust and hope he had built over the years had suddenly vanished in just a few fleeting moments. He was pushed into a corner, his back pressed against the cold wall, his hands clenched tightly as if trying to hold on to the last shred of composure he had left. The tall security officer never took his eyes off Lucas, his gaze hard and stern, while his colleague quickly murmured something into his radio. Captain Oliveira stood a few steps away, arms crossed, a smug expression on her face. She looked at Lucas, a look of satisfaction crossing her face as she saw the fear and panic in his Oliveira stepped forward deliberately, letting her voice echo clearly across the room, ensuring everyone could hear. This is exactly why I always warn that we must never, ever be careless, not even for a second, with airport security. He may look harmless, but who knows what's going on inside his head. One moment of carelessness could lead to unimaginable consequences. Her words struck Lucas like a cold blade to the heart, transforming him from a passionate student with noble dreams into a dangerous threat in the eyes of everyone around him. Lucas could see the fear, concern, and even anger on the faces of the pilots and airport staff, the very same people he had admired just minutes ago and aspired to be like. Unable to bear it any longer, Lucas tried to speak again, his voice trembling, hoarse, but full of desperation. "Please, can I call my father? I swear I didn't do anything wrong." "He can confirm that, please." The security man looked at him for a long moment, then reluctantly nodded. Lucas quickly grabbed his phone, his hand shaking so much that he could barely dial his father's number. His heart was pounding wildly, his breath coming in short gasps, and each ring of the phone only deepened his fear. Lucas prayed silently that his father would answer immediately, but each ring seemed to stretch out endlessly, testing the limits of his patience. While he waited, Oliveira continued speaking to those around her, her voice filled with exaggerated caution, deliberately sowing doubt in everyone's minds. "We are specifically trained for situations like this. People with bad intentions always try to appear innocent, always using logical explanations to hide their true motives. I've seen many similar situations in the past 20 years. Believe me, the way he's acting is definitely suspicious." People began to whisper among themselves, their eyes once again turning to Lucas, now filled with even more doubt and discomfort than before. They no longer saw him as an innocent teenager, but as a real threat, someone to be feared and avoided. Never had Lucas imagined that in the blink of an eye, his entire future, for which he had worked so hard, could be at risk of disappearing because of a baseless accusation from a complete stranger. Lucas knew very well the consequences of something like this. Just one moment of being considered a threat to aviation security could permanently close the door on his dream of becoming a pilot. His reputation, scholarships, career opportunities, everything would dissolve into nothing because of a moment of cruel prejudice. Finally, the phone stopped ringing, and the familiar voice of his father rang out firmly. "Lucas, what's going on?" But hearing his father's voice only made Lucas panic even more, his emotions overwhelming him as he struggled to speak clearly. "Dad, I'm at the airport, and they're saying I entered the pilot's room illegally. They don't believe me. I don't know what to do." There was a sudden silence on the other end, and for a brief moment, Lucas felt as if his heart had stopped. After a pause, his father, Ricardo Santos, spoke firmly and with calm resolve. "Lucas, stay calm. I'm on my way. Don't leave that place. I will take care of this personally." That brief declaration from his father made Lucas break down in tears, both relieved and terrified by what he had just gone through. Oliveira saw Lucas crying and smirked with disdain, speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "So, you had to call your parents after all? Huh, they're all like that. You should have known your place from the beginning." The insult stung Lucas, but he could do nothing except remain silent, waiting for his father to come to his rescue. Never had he wished so much for his father's arrival, because now his dreams, which he had nurtured for so long, were on the brink of total destruction, and his father was the only one who could pull him out of this nightmare. Captain Oliveira's contemptuous whispers still echoed clearly in Lucas's ears, each cold word cutting his heart like a sharp knife. It seemed that calling his father for help had not only failed to improve the situation, but had increased the suspicion and critical stares from the crowd. Oliveira recognized Lucas's vulnerability and wasted no opportunity to exploit it to the fullest. Oliveira took another step into the center of the room, standing tall, her posture full of authority and confidence as if she were at a public trial, where she played both the prosecutor and the judge. Her piercing eyes scanned everyone witnessing the situation, then stopped on Lucas's face with an indescribably cold look. She raised her voice loud enough for everyone inside and outside the room to hear. I hope everyone here understands the seriousness of this matter. We can't just dismiss it as a simple misunderstanding. He didn't just enter a restricted area for pilots illegally, he might be an industrial spy. Someone trying to steal confidential information from our airline. The room fell into near total silence after this grave statement. Lucas felt a chill run down his spine, his eyes wide with disbelief, unable to comprehend the absurd and cruel accusations being thrown at him. An industrial spy, just because he was sitting in the pilot's room watching a documentary about aviation. He was now being turned into a dangerous spy. The murmurs of the crowd spread quickly, with every gaze turning toward Lucas, filled with doubt and judgment. He could feel his honor and dignity being cruelly trampled. But Oliveira didn't stop there. She continued, her tone dripping with sarcasm and malice. He just called his parents. I'm guessing they must be janitors or cleaning staff working here at the airport. Maybe that's how they use their children to get into restricted areas. Who knows what their real intentions are? The giggles and mocking glances began to spread among the employees and pilots watching the situation. Lucas felt as if his heart were being crushed, his entire body trembling with rage and shame. He clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, doing everything he could to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. Throughout his life, Lucas had always been proud of his father, Ricardo Santos, a respected man full of dignity who had dedicated nearly his entire life to ensuring the safety and advancement of the country's aviation industry. Lucas had seen his father stay up all night handling aviation security crises. He had witnessed his determination and bravery in facing difficult challenges. And now, right before his eyes, his beloved father was being cruelly demeaned by Oliveira. The humiliation, the public degradation of his integrity, nearly destroyed Lucas, but he stood firm, his eyes locked on Oliveira with a determined gaze carrying an unmistakable touch of hurt. He understood that at this moment, any display of anger or weakness could be exploited by Oliveira to further reinforce her accusations. Oliveira noticed Lucas's gaze and seemed momentarily surprised by the boy's unusual resilience. But instead of backing down, she became even more determined to escalate the situation, as if she wanted to prove to everyone that she was always right. Think about it, if we hadn't caught this boy today, how serious could the consequences have been? The safety of hundreds of passengers and crew could have been compromised by the slightest lapse in our vigilance. This time, those around her began nodding in agreement, as if they fully believed everything Oliveira said. Lucas felt his heart shattering. He swallowed the pain choking his throat and, with a trembling voice, but unwavering determination, spoke. "Ma'am, I'm not a spy, and my parents are not janitors here. Please don't insult them like that." But Lucas's fragile protest only seemed to please Oliveira even more. She smiled coldly, her voice dripping with contempt. "Oh, I'm not insulting anyone. I'm just presenting a very realistic possibility. The truth is often hard to accept, isn't it?" Lucas could barely stand, his legs trembling with indignation and humiliation, but he refused to fall before such cruelty. Lucas knew he needed to hold onto his dignity, not just for himself, but for his father, who had always taught him that a person's worth is defined by how they face adversity. Now, all Lucas could do was stand there in silent pain, waiting for his father to arrive and rescue him from these cruel and baseless accusations. He told himself to be strong, to endure just a little longer, because Lucas knew for certain that his father would never allow this unjust cruelty to continue for much longer. The persistent echo of Captain Oliveira's cold insults still reverberated in Lucas's ears, leaving his mind almost numb with deep shame and pain. Every suspicious look from the crowd felt like invisible threads tightening around his heart, and every breath he took was heavy and painful. Lucas struggled to stay upright, his legs threatening to give out under the weight of the cruelty and prejudice surrounding him. His hand trembled as he gripped his phone tightly, as if it were the only lifeline he had left to hold onto at that moment. Lucas bowed his head, trying to take a deep breath to steady his voice as he called his father for the second time. His trembling fingers dialed the familiar numbers, each beep echoing like it was amplifying the growing fear inside him. Finally, his father, Ricardo Santos, spoke on the other end, his voice warm yet authoritative, almost making Lucas collapse in relief. "Lucas, it's Dad. Are you okay?" The moment he heard that familiar voice, all the emotions Lucas had held in suddenly exploded. In a fleeting moment, his voice failed, full of panic and weakness more than he had expected. "Dad, they called me a spy. They said I broke into the area, and no one wants to hear my side. I really didn't do anything wrong, but they don't believe me. Dad, can you come here now?" Ricardo paused, and that silence seemed to freeze Lucas's heart. But then his father's voice rose strong and decisive enough to ease part of the fear in Lucas's chest. "Lucas, listen to me. You cannot be afraid or lose your composure now. I'm going to the airport immediately to resolve this. Stay strong. I won't let anyone disrespect you anymore." That firm and authoritative promise from his father sounded like a glimmer of hope shining through the dense darkness of despair in which Lucas was drowning. He took a deep breath, wiping away the tear that threatened to fall. He knew that, at this moment, he needed to stay strong not just for himself, but for his father, who was on his way to restore his dignity and dreams. While Lucas was still trying to regain his composure, Oliveira spoke again, seemingly determined to crush the last glimmer of hope Lucas had just received. Her cold and mocking voice echoed once more, deliberately raised so Lucas could hear clearly. "What a touching performance. I bet his father is rushing out of his post in the bathroom area to come here and clear the name of his precious little son. But unfortunately, we need to resolve this quickly. Airport security can't wait for this little show." The people around them chuckled quietly, their expressions mocking and cruel. Lucas felt his throat tighten, the frustration and anger so intense that he could barely maintain his composure. Still, he bit his lip, keeping his gaze firm and resolute as he looked directly at Oliveira, refusing to let her see his weakness again. She raised an eyebrow at Lucas's stare, clearly surprised by the boy's sudden strength, but she refused to back down. She had gone too far and now couldn't turn back. She quickly turned to the security officers and coldly issued an order. "If his parents don't show up immediately, I suggest you take him away right now. We've wasted too much time with this already." The two security officers exchanged uncertain glances, but finally moved closer to Lucas, as if ready to carry out Oliveira's orders at any moment. Lucas felt every muscle in his body tense, but at that moment, the phone of one of the security officers rang. He quickly answered, and his face changed to one of surprise and clear hesitation. He hung up, walked over to his colleague, and whispered something, causing both of them to pause and exchange a hesitant look. Oliveira noticed this sudden change and frowned in irritation, her sharp voice cutting through the air. "What's going on? Is there a problem for you to be hesitating like this?" The security officer hesitated, unsure how to explain, finally responding in a low tone, but loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "We've just been informed that a high-ranking official from ANAC is on the way to handle this personally. We'll have to wait a little longer." Oliveira was stunned for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. She shrugged, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "ANAC official? How interesting. I'm very curious to see what person from ONAC has so much free time to care about a child like this." Lucas heard every mocking word clearly, but this time he didn't feel weak. His heart was stronger now, fueled by his father's promise. Lucas knew that his father, Ricardo Santos, the respected and powerful man, was on his way, bringing with him the last glimmer of hope that would help Lucas escape this nightmare. The atmosphere in the pilot's lounge was thick with suspicion and tension, like a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. The security team remained cautious, not daring to act despite Captain Oliveira's intense gaze urging them forward. Oliveira stood there, her face betraying frustration, mixed with disbelief. Meanwhile, Lucas clung to his remaining strength, trying not to collapse under the immense pressure weighing on him. Just when Lucas thought he couldn't endure any longer, the walkie-talkie in one of the security officers' hands suddenly crackled to life with a loud, clear sound. A firm voice broke the tense silence, shattering the heavy air in the room. Attention all units, a VIP group is entering the pilot's lounge. Ensure the area is clear and be ready to assist. The sudden announcement made everyone in the room jump, heads turning toward the large door, all waiting to see who the important guest would be. Whispers quickly spread throughout the room, a mixture of curiosity and surprise. Oliveira frowned, clearly irritated by this unexpected development that interrupted and sabotaged her plan to deal with Lucas. She moved closer to the security officer, speaking in a low, but still sharp voice. What VIP could possibly interrupt during such an important moment? I demand that you take this boy out of here immediately. However, the two security officers seemed to have received instructions from a higher authority. They gently shook their heads in a silent but significant gesture, as if to say the situation was now beyond Oliveira's control. Seconds later, the lounge door opened, and strong, determined footsteps echoed rapidly across the polished floor. Lucas lifted his head, his heart nearly exploding with emotion as he recognized the person approaching quickly: his father, Ricardo Santos, the administrator of the National Civil Aviation Agency ANAC. Behind Mr. Santos was a team of high-ranking ANAC officials in impeccable suits, their expression serious and commanding. This sudden appearance immediately silenced the room, as if everyone collectively held their breath to see what would happen next. No one dared speak, only exchanging looks of shock and apprehension, following Ricardo's every move with wide eyes. Oliveira froze, her eyes widening in disbelief as she recognized the powerful man walking directly toward Lucas, someone she had thought was just a common janitor's father at the airport. Her face quickly shifted from confident to intensely worried and shocked. Ricardo Santos walked quickly to Lucas, his expression a mix of concern and affection. He gently placed his hand on his son's trembling shoulder, his voice full of authority yet incredibly warm. "Lucas, are you okay? I'm here now. Don't worry anymore." Those few words felt like a miracle cure to Lucas, bringing an immediate sense of safety and peace that he needed more than ever. Lucas nodded, struggling to hold back the tears streaming down his face. He knew that his father had arrived, and now, he wouldn't be alone anymore. Mr. Santos squeezed his son's shoulder to reassure him before turning, his eyes hard and cold as he faced Captain Oliveira. His voice was clear and authoritative, sending a chill down everyone's spine. "I am Ricardo Santos, administrator of the National Civil Aviation Agency. I have been fully informed about the situation involving my son, Lucas Santos, and I am deeply shocked to learn that my son was falsely accused here at this airport." Oliveira's face turned pale. Her voice faltered and was filled with embarrassment as she weakly tried to justify herself. "Mr. Santos, I didn't know he was your son. We were just trying to ensure the airport's safety." Mr. Santos coldly cut her off, not allowing her to continue. "The safety of the airport is the top priority for ANAC, and for me personally, but that does not give you the right to abuse your authority, to make unfounded accusations, and to humiliate a child based on personal prejudice and bias. What you did not only severely damaged my son's dignity, but also revealed a larger problem in how an experienced pilot like you treats the public and your colleagues." Every word from Mr. Santos was like a powerful gust of wind sweeping through the room, tearing down the false facade that Oliveira had built to cover her mistakes. The others in the room now looked at Oliveira with wide eyes, some showing visible disappointment and disapproval. Oliveira stood frozen, her mind in chaos under the overwhelming pressure of Mr. Santos' sudden appearance. She couldn't say anything. She just lowered her head in embarrassment and shame. Lucas stood beside his father, his heart slowly calming, a feeling of deep gratitude flooding him. He realized how fragile the line between despair and hope truly was. But now, with his father by his side, hope had prevailed, and he had regained his faith in justice and righteousness. The appearance of Ricardo Santos not only helped Lucas regain his dignity, but also completely shifted the balance of power, transforming the nightmare Lucas had just endured into an unexpected turning point, opening the door for the truth to be revealed before everyone's eyes. The tense atmosphere in the pilot's lounge seemed to freeze as the sudden arrival of Mr. Ricardo Santos, accompanied by a group of high-ranking ANAC officials, completely turned the situation around. But Captain Oliveira, in her excessive confidence and arrogance, still hadn't grasped the reality before her. With her stubborn and obstinate attitude, she continued making accusations to support her position. I take full responsibility for my actions. Aviation safety is no joke. We cannot ignore suspicious situations like this. This boy Oliveira's words halted abruptly when her gaze met the stern face of Mr. Ricardo Santos, standing just a few steps away. His face was cold and dignified, his eyes fixed on Oliveira as if he could see through her soul. In that moment, Oliveira finally realized that the situation had slipped completely out of her control. Her face changed from confident to stunned, then quickly turned pale. Her eyes widened in fear as she realized the true identity of the powerful man standing before her. The pride she had always worn disappeared in an instant, leaving behind a woman now utterly confused and trembling under the immense pressure of an unexpected reality. The room fell into absolute silence, a heavy and suffocating silence far more oppressive than any sound that had come before. Airport staff, pilots, and security personnel stood paralyzed, their eyes moving constantly between Mr. Santos and Oliveira, as if witnessing the most dramatic shift in power they had ever seen. No one dared to speak. Everyone was acutely aware that the balance of power had now completely changed. After what felt like an endless silence, Mr. Santos finally spoke. His voice was low but powerful, each word clearly enunciated. "Captain Oliveira, I want to know why you believed my son was a threat to airport security, and what led you to conclude that the access badge he was using was forged." Oliveira swallowed hard, clearly trying to find a reasonable explanation. But all the strength and firmness she once displayed had vanished. Her voice trembled, uncertain and visibly shaken. "Mr. Santos, I didn't know Lucas was your son. I just wanted to ensure aviation security." Mr. Santos didn't let her finish. His gaze became even colder and more severe. "You haven't answered my question directly. I asked what evidence you had to make such a serious accusation against my son. Do you believe that a 16-year-old student, enrolled in an official vocational training program with the airline, is an industrial spy? That is not just a grave insult to Lucas, but also an affront to the very security and pilot training procedures that ANAC works hard to uphold in the aviation industry." His words were like steel blows, strong and precise, shattering every weak defense Oliveira tried to offer. Oliveira lowered her head, her face going pale, desperately trying to justify her irrational actions, but utterly powerless. Those around them, who had once supported or doubted Lucas, now looked at Oliveira with disappointment, surprise, and a touch of discomfort. Mr. Santos turned to the security staff, his voice now stern and clear. "All of you should know better than anyone that your job is to protect security, not follow baseless requests driven by someone's personal prejudices. Detaining an innocent boy and treating him as a suspect is absolutely unacceptable. I demand that you immediately revoke this action and restore to Lucas the respect he deserves." The two security officers quickly lowered their heads, visibly ashamed and uncomfortable for having acted without proper consideration. One of them stepped forward, bowed slightly to Lucas, and spoke softly, but sincerely, "I sincerely apologize for what happened. Please forgive our mistake." Still standing beside his father, Lucas felt his heart swell with relief and deep emotion. He said nothing, only nodded gently enough to convey the forgiveness and tolerance his father had taught him since childhood. At this point, Oliveira seemed to have lost all her strength. She could no longer stand tall. The looks of admiration and trust she once received were now replaced by contempt and clear disappointment. She knew that the image and reputation she had meticulously built over more than 20 years had completely crumbled in just a few minutes. The moment of reversal in power had happened so quickly, but for Lucas, it lasted long enough for him to understand the true value of justice, and the real power of standing tall beside his father. More than ever before, he felt the deep meaning of the words his father had always taught him. No one has the right to take away your dignity unless you allow it, and from that moment on, Lucas decided he would never again let anyone do that to him. The heavy silence in the room seemed to stretch on endlessly, with all eyes focused on Ricardo Santos, the powerful man standing at the center like an immovable fortress. He maintained his imposing posture, his sharp eyes fixed directly on Captain Oliveira, as if searching for a reasonable explanation from her for the mistake that had just occurred. At that moment, everyone knew that this was no longer a casual conversation, but a rigorous interrogation about the ethics and professional responsibility of a senior pilot like Oliveira. The cold, deep voice of Ricardo Santos broke the tense silence, each word carrying a heavy weight of authority. Captain Oliveira, I expect a clear and convincing answer from you. On what basis did you conclude that Lucas posed a threat to airport security? What evidence did you rely on when you called security and publicly accused my son of being an industrial spy? At that moment, Oliveira seemed cornered. Her confused expression was more evident than ever. She looked around as if searching for sympathy from those present, but all she received was silence, full of reproach. Oliveira stammered, her voice hesitant as she tried to justify her mistake. Mr. Santos, I truly didn't mean any harm. I was just fulfilling my duty as a pilot, ensuring the security of this restricted area. Lucas was sitting alone in the pilot's lounge with a badge I found suspicious. I was just following security procedures. Santos raised an eyebrow, his expression still cold and stern. He took a step closer, making Oliveira instinctively step back. His voice echoed with even more weight, cutting through her weak defense. You were following security procedures, were you? Did you properly verify Lucas' identity, or did you simply jump to conclusions based on personal bias? I reviewed the situation as soon as I was informed, and Lucas' badge was completely valid, with all the necessary authorizations for him to be here. What deeply disappoints me is that you hastily made an incorrect judgment, turning my son into a suspect in front of so many people. Oliveira swallowed hard, trying to hold on to the last shred of dignity she had left. She continued justifying herself, her voice growing weaker and more tremulous. Mr. Santos, I really didn't know he was your son. If I had known he was your son, I certainly wouldn't have acted this way. Your thoughtless comment immediately changed the atmosphere in the room. Everyone, including Lucas, the ANAC agents, and Santos, immediately understood the profound implications of your prejudiced statement. Oliveira instantly regretted her words, but once spoken, they could not be taken back. Santos stood still for a moment, his gaze unwavering as it pierced through Oliveira. His voice became even more serious and sharp. If you knew he was my son, you would have never said that, Captain Oliveira. This clearly shows that the real issue here is not whether Lucas is dangerous, but your prejudice and discrimination against those you deem unworthy of trust simply because of their appearance. As a senior pilot at TAN, you should have a much clearer understanding of responsibility and professional ethics. It is unacceptable for you to let your personal bias influence your judgment and decisions in your work. Oliveira lowered her head, her face pale with shame and fear. Everyone could clearly see her collapse and confusion. Someone who had always prided herself on her power and status, the airport staff and other pilots who witnessed this felt deeply disappointed to see the truth behind the veneer of authority and professionalism they had once admired. Santos continued, this time slowing his speech but maintaining his severe posture. I want everyone here to understand this. ANAC will never tolerate any form of discrimination or prejudice in the aviation industry. Those of us in this field must understand that our job is to ensure safety and fairness for all passengers and employees. I do not want to witness any more incidents like this in the future. He then turned to the ANAC team with him, gently issuing an order. I request an immediate and thorough investigation into Captain Oliveira's actions today, including her conduct and her treatment of Lucas. We need to fully clarify and resolve this issue. The ANAC agent immediately nodded in agreement as Oliveira stood paralyzed, her head bowed, completely powerless in the face of the current situation. She knew very well that her career, her future at TAN, and in the aviation industry were now at serious risk. Lucas, standing beside his father, finally felt his heart calm. The strength and justice his father had just shown helped him understand more clearly than ever the true value of courage, belief in justice, and standing firm against injustices. This moment was a valuable lesson for everyone present, showing that true power does not lie in position or rank, but in justice, integrity, and self-respect. Lucas felt prouder of his father than ever before and promised himself that no matter where he was in the future, he would always uphold the dignity and courage his father had taught and protected him with today. While the room remained heavy with the tense silence from Mr. Ricardo Santos' stern questioning, one of the senior ANAC officials quickly opened the tablet in his hands, approached him, and whispered something. Mr. Santos listened attentively, then gave a slight nod of agreement, his gaze never leaving Captain Oliveira, who was now almost collapsing under the immense psychological pressure weighing on her shoulders. The ANAC official immediately stepped forward, his voice clear and decisive, breaking the suffocating silence. Mr. Santos, we have just conducted a complete review of the security footage in the pilot's rest area, and we have gathered some very clear and objective evidence related to the incident that just occurred. As he spoke, he connected the tablet to the large screen in the break room. A video began to play, clearly showing Lucas entering the pilot's room with Teresa from the HR department. In the video, Mrs. Teresa personally handed Lucas a special access card, pointed to the designated seating area, and then quickly left to attend to her work. The entire process followed the protocol in a clear and transparent manner. The video continued, showing Lucas sitting quietly in the chair, doing nothing suspicious. The boy was focused on the documentary playing on the TV, never leaving his seat. Only when Captain Oliveira entered and began questioning him harshly and without basis did Lucas stand up to try to explain the situation. When the video ended, the room erupted in murmurs of disbelief. All eyes turned to Oliveira, full of reproach and disappointment for the serious mistake she had just made. Oliveira remained frozen, her face flushed with shame and helplessness, knowing that there was no longer any way to justify her action. The ANAC official didn't stop there. He continued, his tone now more serious, clearly aiming to clarify the entire situation. We also checked Captain Oliveira's work history, both in ANAC's systems and in TAN's internal systems. The results of this investigation is disappointing and concerning, as this is not the first time Mrs. Oliveira has been involved in such behavior. All eyes sharpened, focusing entirely on the man delivering this shocking information. Oliveira trembled, her face paling as she realized that the truth she had tried to hide was now being exposed in front of everyone. In the last 3 years, we have documented at least 3 official complaints about discriminatory behavior by Captain Oliveira towards employees and clients of color. Specifically, the complaints clearly show that Mrs. Oliveira repeatedly made unfounded accusations and assumptions based on personal prejudice, causing significant harm to the reputation and dignity of innocent individuals she targeted. These words struck like bullets directly at the career and reputation Oliveira had worked so hard to build. The room grew noisier, whispers and gossip spreading rapidly, and Oliveira felt every gaze piercing into her, as if searching her soul and integrity. At this moment, Lucas stood silently by his father, feeling both relieved that the truth had come to light and saddened by the cruelty that prejudice could inflict on others. He looked at his father, Ricardo Santos, still standing tall. His face was severe, but his eyes calm and just. It was his father who had brought justice, not just for Lucas, but for all the victims who had been treated unfairly in the past. Oliveira, unable to bear the pressure any longer, weakly tried to speak, begging for sympathy from Mr. Santos and the witnesses present. I am truly sorry. I never intended to hurt anyone. I was just very concerned about safety. Please, give me a chance. Mr. Santos immediately cut her off, his voice still cold but reasonable. Captain Oliveira, this is not the first time you have caused such an incident. I believe everyone deserves forgiveness when they make a mistake. But forgiveness is only for those who acknowledge their mistakes and genuinely change. What you have shown here only proves further the serious ethical problems and deeply rooted prejudices in your behavior. The aviation industry absolutely cannot tolerate such actions. He paused for a moment, his severe gaze sweeping across the room, delivering this crucial message to everyone. I want everyone here to understand that prejudice and discrimination have no place in aviation or any other profession. This is a great lesson, not just for Captain Oliveira, but for all of us, about the true values of justice, dignity, and mutual respect. Lucas felt prouder than ever of his father, the man who courageously defended what was right. He knew that from this moment on, he would never forget this moment, the moment when the truth was exposed for all to see. After Mr. Ricardo Santos' final words, full of authority and determination, echoed in the room, the space fell once again into heavy silence. But this time, it was not the silence of doubt or fear. It was the silence of waiting and anticipation for a fair and clear decision. Santos cast a hard, severe glance around the room, his gaze lingering for a long time on the pale, ashamed face of Captain Oliveira, as if to firmly assert that the mistake she had made would be held accountable. Finally, he spoke with a strong, clear voice, enunciating each word with unwavering resolve and determination. As administrator of the National Civil Aviation Agency, I hereby immediately suspend Captain Renato Oliveira from service and request that ANAC work closely with TAN to conduct a comprehensive investigation into her professional ethics, her ability to assess flight safety, and all her recent activities. Until the investigation is concluded, Captain Oliveira will be prohibited from performing any flight duties, and all her powers will be temporarily revoked. Santos' words struck immediately. Every word he spoke was like a lightning bolt, hitting Oliveira's career and pride. The woman, once full of authority and arrogance, now stood motionless, her expression changing from pale to a bright red of shame and despair. She tried to speak, perhaps to offer an explanation or beg for forgiveness, but the words got stuck in her throat, unable to escape. At that moment, two airport security officers approached with serious expressions, decisively carrying out the orders that had just been given. They stood by Oliveira and coldly announced, "Captain Oliveira, please come with us immediately." Oliveira raised her head, her eyes pleading desperately, but everyone present either turned their gaze away or stared at her with visible disappointment and contempt. There was no longer anyone among her colleagues, who had once respected and admired her, to speak in her defense or show any sympathy. Lucas remained silent by his father's side, his heart filled with complex emotions. On one hand, he felt relief knowing that justice had been done, the truth had been revealed, and he would no longer have to endure any unfair humiliation. But on the other hand, he felt sadness witnessing someone pay the painful and public price for their severe mistakes. He now understood the painful lesson about the unpredictable consequences of prejudice and arrogance, something his father had taught him many times, but which only now became truly clear to him. She finally realized there was no turning back. She lowered her head and walked silently between the two security officers, each step feeling as if she were carrying a ton of stones. As she passed the pilot's lounge, the room remained in complete silence, each gaze following every one of her embarrassed steps. It was a moment to remember, a clear reminder of how quickly power can disappear if not used appropriately and justly. Once Oliveira's figure disappeared through the door, Mr. Santos calmly turned to the ANAC staff and the airline leadership, giving the next set of instructions with efficiency and professionalism. I want ANAC and TAM to work together to ensure that this investigation is conducted in the most fair and transparent manner possible. We need to clearly identify the responsibility of each individual involved, while also reviewing all airport security procedures and training to ensure that such incidents do not happen again in the future. The ANAC staff and airline representatives nodded seriously. quickly beginning to implement Mr. Santos' guidelines. Mr. Santos looked at his father, and his heart swelled with pride, not only because of his father's dignity and decision, but also because of the compassion and determination to defend what was right that his father had always taught him through his actions. Mr. Santos turned to Lucas, his severe gaze softening as he looked at his beloved son. He gently placed his hand on Lucas' shoulder and spoke in a warm and reassuring tone. "Lucas, I am very proud of you, not only because you stood firm in such a difficult situation, but also because you maintained the dignity and resilience that I have always hoped you would have. This will be a great lesson in your life, and I am sure that from now on, you will be even stronger in facing any challenge." Lucas nodded slightly, his heart filled with gratitude and intense emotions that were hard to put into words. He knew that from today on, his story would not just be about an unjust accusation and injustice, but also the clearest proof of the triumph of what was right over prejudice and tyranny. At that moment, in the room, he had just witnessed the true reversal of power and justice. Lucas understood that sometimes, even though justice may arrive late, it will always prevail. And from this point on, what he needed to do was continue to walk firmly on the challenging path with his father by his side to guide him. As Oliveira's heavy footsteps gradually faded from the pilot's lounge door, the air slowly dissipated with them. Lucas remained silent by his father's side, his heart much lighter now, although he could not completely escape the echoes of the insult he had just suffered. Mr. Santos, noticing the slight concern still lingering in his son's eyes, gently squeezed Lucas' hand a little harder, transmitting warmth and deep comfort. "Lucas, remember this. The true value of a person is measured by how they face adversity, not by the judgment of anyone else. I know how strong you were today, and I am more proud of you than ever." Lucas looked at his father, recognizing the unwavering trust and love reflected in his deep and affectionate gaze. His father's simple yet powerful words felt like a stream of fresh water, washing away all the pain caused by prejudice. Little by little, the belief in himself and his future reignited in his heart, making him stand taller, his expression calmer and more determined. At that moment, among the pilots gathered around, one figure stepped forward with a confident but approachable posture. It was Captain Julie Anacosta, a black pilot with over 20 years of flying experience, renowned not only for her exceptional skills, but also for her kindness and advocacy for racial equality in aviation. She approached Lucas with a warm and genuine smile, full of empathy and encouragement. "Lucas, I am Captain Julie Anacosta. I'm so sorry for what you've just gone through, but I want you to understand that the aviation industry is always open to people like you, young, passionate, talented, and courageous. I'd love to invite you to see the cockpit of the plane I'm about to pilot, so you can experience firsthand the place where I believe you truly belong." Captain Costa's sincere invitation immediately brightened Lucas' eyes with excitement. He looked at his father, seeking permission, and received a gentle but meaningful nod from Mr. Santos. That moment seemed to fill Lucas with renewed strength, allowing him to put aside all his previous concerns and move forward with an open heart. As they left the pilot's lounge with Captain Costa, Lucas could clearly feel the change in the eyes and attitudes of those around him. No longer were there looks of doubt or scrutiny, only warm and encouraging gazes, and even sincere apologies from other airport staff and pilots. Lucas realized that justice was not just about punishing those who had wronged him, but also about restoring the honor and dignity of those who had been hurt in a fair and clear way. Down the long airport corridor, Lucas and Captain Costa walked and talked. She shared valuable experiences from her flying career, including the challenges she faced when entering aviation for the first time, especially the persistent prejudices that at times made her want to give up. "Lucas, I've been through moments like yours today. I felt the deep pain of being doubted and judged just because of the color of my skin and my background. But then I realized that the best way to overcome prejudice is not through anger or resentment, but by proving to them that we not only deserve our place, but can go far beyond what they imagine." Her words deeply touched Lucas' soul, making him even more aware of the path ahead. He felt incredibly grateful for Captain Costa's presence in such a crucial moment, not only for the confidence and hope she inspired in him, but also for being a living example of strength and courage in the face of prejudice and adversity. Finally, they stopped in front of the door to the Boeing cockpit, the plane Captain Costa would pilot on her next flight. The cockpit door opened, revealing a series of bright control panels, buttons, screens, and a complex but fascinating system. Lucas felt his heart race, filled with emotion and deep feeling. Captain Costa smiled at the young man, gently placing her hand on his shoulder, and spoke in a firm, reassuring voice, "This is the place where I believe you will be in the not-so-distant future. Lucas, don't let anyone or anything make you doubt your abilities or your place. The sky is always wide enough to welcome those who are brave enough to move forward." Lucas looked into her eyes, a powerful wave of emotion rising within him. He understood that this was a precious moment, one that fully restored his faith in the future he had always dreamed of. In his heart, there was no longer any space for fear or doubt, only a strong belief that he truly belonged here in the vast and challenging sky. At that moment, as Lucas stepped into the cockpit, he knew that his life was about to begin a completely new chapter, one where honor, hope, and the dream of flying freely through the sky would always be nurtured, protected, and fulfilled through his effort and courage. After the unforgettable moment when Lucas took his first step into the Boeing cockpit with Captain Julie Costa, the young man's story seemed to unfold a completely new chapter. Lucas was no longer just a teenager overcoming a personal challenge. He had now become a living symbol of justice, courage, and faith in the future that the aviation industry aspired to achieve. As for Ricardo Santos, after the turbulent events that had occurred, he deeply realized that prejudice and racism still existed, as a latent threat to both the aviation industry and society in general. In his role as administrator of ANAC, he decided to take bold and decisive actions by launching a large-scale campaign to diversify the workforce in aviation, with a special emphasis on eradicating all forms of prejudice based on race, gender, or class. Within just a few weeks, ANAC introduced a series of new programs aimed at young people across the country, with the goal of creating fair and transparent opportunities for passionate young people to join the aviation industry. These programs not only provided access to cutting-edge education and training, but also focused on raising awareness about equal rights, diversity, and the spirit of solidarity. The central message that Santos conveyed was clear and strong. Everyone, regardless of their background, deserves to fly as high and as far as their dreams can take them. Meanwhile, Lucas, who had once endured painful injustice, had become a prominent young ambassador for ANAC. He was invited to numerous schools, workshops, and community events to share his own story, spreading the powerful message that no one should suffer fear or injustice because of their race or background while pursuing their dreams. Every time he stood before the eager and hopeful faces of young people, Lucas no longer felt the hesitation or anxiety he once had. He now spoke with confidence, recounting his journey from the pain and despair of facing prejudice and discrimination to the moment when justice was firmly and clearly upheld. Thanks to the timely intervention of his father and Anak, Lucas emphasized that although in life, injustice and prejudice may sometimes shake our faith, in the end, truth and justice will always prevail if we have the courage to face and fight against it. Lucas realized that he was no longer just a storyteller. He had become an inspiration and motivator for young people like him, those who may have once feared that their background, family situation, or skin color would stand in the way of their dreams. He always ended his lectures with a simple but powerful phrase: never forget that the aviation industry, or any other profession, needs people like you. Diversity is strength, and every dream deserves protection. I am here today to affirm that the future is always open to those brave enough to move forward and pursue what they believe in. Lucas' sincere words were always met with enthusiastic applause, bright eyes, and even emotional moments of tears from those who listened. In this way, Lucas' story became not just his own, but a collective story, inspiring many young people to break through their limitations and fears to achieve even greater dreams. As for Captain Oliveira, after a thorough and transparent investigation by ANAC, she had to face severe consequences for her wrongful actions. Although painful, this was necessary to send a clear message that no one has the right to use their power to harm others based on personal prejudices. Oliveira, losing her position and authority, became a vivid testament to the power of justice, showing that no one is above the law or professional ethics. Thanks to Santos' decisive and swift actions, the story did not end as just an isolated event. It became a turning point, driving significant and positive changes throughout the aviation industry. Airports and airlines across Brazil began to rigorously review all their processes, providing employees with comprehensive training on social awareness and cultural diversity like never before. Through this dramatic and intense event, everyone recognized the dangerous power of prejudice, but also felt the immense power and potential for change that justice and social responsibility can bring. The shift in the central character, from a mother CEO to a father at the helm of ANAC, made the implementation of justice more powerful, clear, and direct than ever. This helped deliver a profound and incisive message. Every dream deserves protection, and no one should pay the price of fear because of differences in skin color, status, or family background. For Lucas, every step forward in his life was now not only for himself, but also to continue spreading these human values, helping society move closer to a future where everyone is treated with the dignity, respect, and justice they deserve. Through Lucas Santos' emotional and dramatic story, we see the devastating impact that prejudice can have, but we also witness the tremendous strength of justice and social responsibility when carried out with firmness and clarity. No one deserves to experience injustice or sacrifice their dreams because of their skin color, status, or background. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination due to prejudice? Share your story or thoughts in the comments so that we can spread the message of equality and justice together. If you found this video meaningful, please leave a like, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories. Thank you for watching, and until next time.